Okay. Recently we went to Vanuatu and I got bent diving on the President Coolidge, and that was an interesting experience. So I'm going to step you through this whole thing in two stages. First of all, I'm going to talk about everything that happened and leading up to the being bent, and then I'm going to analyse with that Swiss cheese model um, the things that contributed or possibly contributed. And during this process, I'm going to talk about all the things I've learned about medical evacuation, what I've learned about insurance companies, and what I've learned about doctors.
Let's take it that order.
We'll be done in 5 minutes.
Is this being recorded?
Yes.
Nothing too controversial. I just need to know how to get to the next slide. Oh, look, something looks good. Okay, yeah, it was awesome diving the President Coolidge. So before I go into the bad stuff that happened to me, just want you to know that I enjoyed my 7 dives that I got to do out of the 21 I was planning to have. So I got a third of the way through the trip. Absolutely loved it, and can't wait to get back in the water any day I'm allowed to. So after 7 dives, one night I woke up in the middle of the night with tinnitus, one ear only, in my right ear. And I thought, oh, well, that's not great. And I had a little bit of problem the day before that with some wax build-up in my ears. So I thought, well, I'll give it a break for a day. And I reluctantly said to the crew, I'm not going to meet you guys out there today. Besides that, Tanya's kind of, many days sitting in resorts waiting for me to come back from diving. She could use some company and something different. So we rented a car for the day and drove up the length of the island. And look, anyone that's been away with me probably understands that I'm kind of keen on a beer. And so given it was our lay day, I thought I might have one beer with my lunch on this particular day. And this was the view, just took that selfie, sitting up there with my beer. Beautiful view, fantastic day, and see how much of the beer I've drunk. Now, look, that's not even a fingernail. I love my beer. I got that far into my beer and I felt really, really dizzy, like extreme vertigo. I could barely walk off that stool to the beach to lay down on a deck chair. And I said to Tanya, wow, this local beer, it's powerful. Better get us some more of this to take home. Anyway, a little bit later, we thought, well, okay, this is not great. So went back, spoke to the rest of our dive crew, and rested for the afternoon. But thought, well, let's see how it goes. It was too late in the day to do much about it by the time we got back to civilization. So we thought we'll do something in the morning. So I went down to the hospital and said, well, what's going on, Doc? And the local doctor, she immediately put me on oxygen because not certain at that stage are we dealing with barotrauma or a DCI. In any case, oxygen's great for both. So they put me on the big tanks at the hospital, and I was on that for about 9 hours the first day, just breathing pure oxygen, and that seemed to be helping with the vertigo. But all through the day, this doctor, now she's actually a volunteer working over in Palau. Where are we? No, Vanuatu, whatever country, they're a bit blurry now. And she was advocating for me to get airlifted out as soon as possible and get to a chamber. There is no chamber up near the president. You've got to go down. The nearest one is Port Vila. But she had a very frustrating day talking to Dan Insurance on the phone. In the morning they said, yep, sounds like it's serious. The Dan doctor said, yes, it sounds serious enough. We'll organise a flight out of there, a low-level flight, so below 10,000 feet, get the patient down to the nearest chamber. We got mucked around all day, and at the end of the day, when the hospital was closing up, we still couldn't get a reply from Dan Medical Insurance. So I got borrowed a bottle of 100% O2 from the dive shop, went home, and that photo is me laying in my motel bed, sucking pure oxygen through my reeds because there was not much option. And I wasn't doing it all night because I only had it might have been a 6 litre bottle or something of oxygen. So I was just having little doses now and then just to keep the vertigo under control. So the next morning, 8 o'clock, report back to hospital as they're opening the doors. And dealing once again with this fantastic local doctor, or not local, sorry, she's a Kiwi on secondment as a volunteer. And she was talking to the Dan duty doctor who understood what was going on, and he agreed. He said, yep, no worries. While she's talking to the Dan doctor, the Dan insurance person rang the clinic. So we've got 2 mobile phones going and a 3-way conversation between everyone. And the doctor with me, she said at one point in the conversation, I'm a GP with the patient and diving experience. You've got a diving expert doctor on the other phone, both of us telling you the patient needs evacuation. If you don't sign the evacuation order now, you're leaving yourself liable to a medical malpractice suit. I thought, wow, that was really good thinking of her, thinking on her feet to come up with, and put the insurance company on the spot. Dan Insurance is not part of Dan. It's a separate company. So this is where the confusion started. Now I understand that there is no such thing as Dan Insurance. It's just whoever they get to insure themselves. So these are actually a bit of a typo on the screen there. It's an insurance company and Dan is our go-between. Sorry, for anyone who doesn't know, Dan, Diver Alert Network, scuba diving insurance. So anyway, we had that little hustle and bustle, and eventually they organised a low-level flight from Santo down to Port Vila. So they shipped me down there and put me in a chamber, and it's a fairly primitive-looking chamber down in Port Vila. It's owned by Dan, and it's stored at the back of a scrap metal yard. And the guy down the bottom on the left, he's the guy that owns the scrap metal yard. The chamber belongs to Dan. It's actually labelled with Alfred Hospital on one side of it. But it's managed by, so this bloke has actually just sold his dive business, but that's his crew with me who have all taken time off work to operate the chamber. None of them are doctors. They're all just scuba divers and diving instructors. They've been taught how to operate the machine, and they go off a doctor's instructions. So they were told to give me a level 6 chamber treatment, which basically means you're in the chamber for 5 hours. So it's me and the ball guy in the background, locked in the chamber, while 2 blokes monitor us outside, and they took us down to 18 metres. I'm breathing pure oxygen through a mask. My co-diver, he's on air during the dive, and he just breathes pure oxygen as we return to surface level. But I arrived at 9 o'clock at night, and I was there till early hours in the morning, and these guys have already given up a day of work because the Dan underwriters, insurance underwriters, stuffed them around so much, they thought I was arriving the day before. So the 2 days I'm in hospital, they're pacing around waiting for the plane to land with this patient that they're expecting. So anyway, at the end of that treatment, I went home and I got on the internet, couldn't sleep that night because I thought, wow, what the hell's going on here? I didn't have a lot of information to hand on how serious my condition was and what my prognosis was. So I thought I'll drop an email to the Alfred Hospital. Thankfully, that was the best thing I could have done, because immediately, when they got to work and saw the email, they lined up a Zoom meeting with me. And that was fantastic. I spent an hour and a half on a Zoom session talking to the 2 top practitioners at the Alfred Hospital. And we went through incredible detail of all my logs, all 7 dives, from one end to the other. They wrote down absolutely everything. And then they essentially became my doctors. And they're based in Australia, so they became my advocacy. And when they spoke to Dan Insurance, the Dan group, it put the wind up them, I think. because then suddenly we were getting a lot more movement from the damn underwriters in America, who then completely flipped. So from barely pulling a hand out of the pocket for a low level flight, next thing they scramble a Learjet that flies from Brisbane to Port Vila, loads me and Tanya into this Learjet. The one that the Prime Minister uses for his short hops around Australia. So they've got like vinyl covers and they've got a stretcher they put inside, turns it into a patient plane, and they put 2 medics in there. And then when I'm out of it, they strip all that out and it goes back to being a executive jet. So I got to tick off another bucket list item. I got flying a Learjet, which was pretty damn cool, I have to say. And the next slide will give you an idea of how cool it was.
Did you go business class to that? Foodies.
So, like, I'm playing around in this Learjet and sitting on the flight deck and having a great time and you know, not even complaining about the egg sandwiches because I wasn't going to, you know, bicker about the in-flight service. And but this thing flies around the world. The medic was telling me he just got back from picking up an American businessman in the UAE and flying him halfway around the world. They just escort patients around the planet and clock up thousands of hours. Anyway, so that was my fun Learjet flight. And at the end of that, like, you know, there's another ambulance waiting on the tarmac when I was transferred. This took me to Townsville. And we land at Townsville, and I'm feeling so guilty, hopping out of my Learjet. I was supposed to be a sick patient, and here I'm down, bouncing around on the flight deck, and like, oh, mate, this is awesome.
That was the Rolls Royce.
So I hobbled, I did a bit of a hobble out of the jet to make it look like they turned up for something worthwhile. So, and yeah, they transferred me to Townsville Hospital. Fantastic. The dive, the clinicians there are fantastic. The centre's incredible. They're very proud of their chamber. The chamber technician took me on a behind the scenes tour. He just couldn't wait to share all the tech with me, but you know, being a diver. They don't get many divers in barochambers. They're used for many other medical treatments, which Dave and Pam could probably elaborate a lot more on this than me, but yeah, it is absolutely incredible. Yeah, so there's a lineup of people waiting to get in with us, and yeah. So anyway, look, I'm prattling on. I'll keep going. So at that chamber, you're in an armchair. You've got toilet facilities, which can be nice if you're in for a few hours, and you sit with a full hood on rather than breathing through a mask, through a small face mask. Then so 5 days of that, and then I booked my own commercial flight to Melbourne. So the free Learjet flights only take you to Australian territory. And this is an important point to note because Dan Insurance covers you for medical emergencies outside of Australian jurisdictions.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So we didn't know what was covered when we arrived in Australia. And I've got Dan on the phone trying to book us motels to stay at in Townsville. And they were quoting a room $7,000 for 5 nights. And I thought, wow, that'd be awesome, wouldn't it? It was covered under insurance. Luckily, we didn't take that option. We went to the dodgy city motel, which was only like $140 a night. Horrible place, but when we got the bills later, we were glad we didn't take the 7,000.
Is that what's that green? Sorry, the glass chamber. That's not the chamber, is it?
That's the chambers in the Alfred upstairs.
That's actually the chamber, is it?
That's a chamber in the Alfred.
I've been there.
I didn't realise
So
that.
you got the downstairs one, which you might do on the tour, where you got all the chairs in the sitting room.
Yeah.
Upstairs, you've got individual ones, so they
So
can
what
do.
sort of pressure can that go up to? You know?
I don't know. They at this stage, this is my follow-up treatment. They're only doing 10 meters.
Okay. No.
The initial was 18 meters, and then the follow-ups tend to be 2 hours of
Right.
2 hours of 10 meters. Oh, it might be 14 meters, I think. Yeah.
You got to be careful on those ones because they're full of 100% O2.
Yeah.
So you know you can't even wear deodorant or anything because with this spark you go.
You poof.
Yeah, the questionnaire
Your
before
armpits
you,
will catch on fire.
Sorry.
Your armpits will catch on fire.
questionnaire
I know a bloke
before
who had
you,
burned armpits once. So I said, "How'd you do that?" And he said, "Sorry, I'm digressing. He's filling his car with petrol, and then he lit a smoke, and his hands caught on fire, With this. He ended up with burnout, sorry. But that's true, that's a true story, that.
The questions before you get into this chamber are fairly detailed. Like they make sure you haven't left a stitch of underwear on. Well, they don't physically check, but they do ask you every single time, have you taken your underwear off? If you put deodorant on today, have you wiped on your armpits? Yada, yada, yada. Anyway, that's not the point of the story. What have I done? I've got out of my presentation.
Still up on
Where you still see on the screen.
Yeah.
Right, tell me when it's supposed to the next screen. What have I done?
You're still on online.
Yeah, but I can't get my next screen.
Yeah,
I'll just come to the rescue.
Is that?
you've lost focus.
Is that the presentation or is it just?
Yeah, well, I don't know if that's the president. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Brian, can you just come over and give us a hamlet? If you're in the hood.
Yeah, no problems. I'll be there in about 10 hours.
No.
Okay,
We need all the IT people.
yeah, okay, we need
Yeah,
to
get
highlight
Matthias in. Yeah.
something, Matthias, and it's not going to the screen. I think I've actually got out of the presentation.
But the SAS man.
Because you're on the Zoom thing.
Yeah. Should I be on that? No.
No, you
PowerPoint.
should be on that.
Uh-huh. There we go, there we go.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. Wow,
Thank you.
we've got just enough IT experts in the room to make it work.
Where's the printer?
Wait, ladies' face.
So at Townsville Hospital, they started doing tests on me, and it turns out my right ear, I've lost 4 kilohertz and above. Well, at that point, I've lost pretty much all hearing from 4 kilohertz up. So that first red dot at the bottom of the screen, that's the 4 kilohertz hearing loss there. Since then, it has actually recovered a little bit at 4 kilohertz, but the rest is gone. And they're assuring me that's permanent. I've also got tinnitus in the right ear, and they assure me that that's permanent. The amusing thing to Tanya was that these F, K, S, T, H, and SH letters I can't hear, so she was practicing how many words she could put together in my right ear and get away with it. So anyway. Oh, and also I found out that the Apple EarPod Pro hearing tests are remarkably accurate. The reason I know that is I started running tests and took my test results into the audiologist at the Alfred, and she was absolutely stunned. She said, "Oh, well, no patient's ever bought one of these into me before," but she said, "Thanks for showing me my future." I also had vertigo. Now the vertigo's gone, but just to quickly cover on what that is, it's the vestibular, so inside your ear, these 3 loopy circle things here. Those blobby things, they give you the sense of movement up, down, left, right, forward, back. So 3 dimensions, that's why there's 3 of them. This little petri dish down here, the size of your fingernail, is the actual organ. It's tiny, really tiny organ inside your brain. This right posterior test is what the doctor did to assess that was damaged. The first curve is what the actual movement of my body was when he threw my head back. The right-hand side is what they do when they map your eyeball and see what your brain thinks your body's doing. And that delay is what causes the vertigo. Well, not causes, but that's how they map that you've got vertigo. So I thought that was particularly interesting. Anyway, that's all gone. So that's, yeah. All right. So now non-divers ask me what caused it. They say, "Oh, did you come to the surface too quick? Did you run out of air?" You know, all these sort of questions. And I've got a simple 1-word answer for non-divers of what happened. When we get to the end of this, which is not too far away, I'm going to tell you what my 1-word answer to non-divers is, and see if any of you think it fits the cause. But anyway, thinking about what happened, this Swiss cheese model kept running through my brain. What actually caused me to get bent? Because I spent a lot of time talking to John Littman. He went through all my dive tables. He said, "Look, you haven't done anything outside of what you've been trained to do, except maybe a little deep." He said you were doing a lot of deep dives and back to back, and he would have advocated for longer breaks between and that sort of thing. Anyway, look, so there was not one. What I'm saying is, when you look at my dive logs, there's not one thing on the log that says, "Hey, that's where you went wrong." So that's my actual dive log, one of them. That's actually my last dive. So you can see here at the 30-minute mark, I'm at my deco stop, deco/safety, and it then took 20 minutes from there to get out of the water. I was using Ian as my sort of guide, because I know he's very particular on his stops, and so if he wasn't moving, I wasn't moving, and I didn't care if I was sucking the tank dry. I wasn't getting out of that water till Ian moved. So these are some of the things that I noted. I'm not saying like I'm not digging for blame here. I'm just pointing out things that I observed, some things that weren't quite right. We were diving to 47 meters on a single tank of air. Later, after I left, the crew were diving to 55 meters on a single tank. There was no stage tanks provided. The guide did not have an alternate air source. He had his one tank, which had an ockie, but that was it. One of our crew asked if he could take a pony bottle, and with a bit of shuffling around and mucking around in the back rooms, they finally came up with a set of regs for him so that he could have a pony bottle. But out of the group of us, one of our crew had a pony bottle and no one else had alternate air. The dive company left a 6 litre, I think it was about a 6 litre emergency air on the way out to the ship. So we're doing shore entries. We're swimming out maybe 100, bit over 100 meters, 120 meters out into the water to get to the ship. Halfway out there is the 8 meter mark, and that's where we're doing our deco. They've tied a 6 litre bottle to the rope there. That rope's not over the ship. That's not even close to the ship. There's nowhere near the engine room that we're swimming through. Anyway, they're just observations that.
How do you know the way back, by the way?
Well, we're supposed to stay with that guide, supposedly, and there's ropes from the shore to the bow of the boat. So you always exit from the bow and follow the ropes back.
What were you said you should have had a bit longer times between dives. What sort of times were you
We're doing about an hour and a quarter.
That's what your computers recommended, presumably.
Hours of, it was happy to let us back in the water because we haven't, But John Lippman said, no, we should be doing like a morning dive and an afternoon dive, or a morning dive and a lunchtime dive, not doing. But for this depth, on repeat dive, he said you should be doing those depths back to back on air with using your 1 hour break system. Yep. Okay.
Oh, sorry, you said you did 3 a day, didn't you?
2, 3, 2, and there was 2. It was the second day was the only day we did 3 dives. That was because of the night dive.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Look, I'm only up to about 400 dives myself in my diving career. I've done 35, 45 meter dives before, but not back to back. I'm not a very experienced deep water diver. This is new territory for me. On my last dive, I did get to what I would consider low air at depth. So that's not to say I was out of air, but for looking at my deco on my computer, looking at where we were inside the bow of the ship and the tanks that are around me and the lack of backup air, I would now regard myself as out of air. Not out of air, but too low to continue to dive. The guide gave us a plan for what we were going to do, and he kind of stuck to it, but not stuck to it. So he was supposed to check our gauges halfway through the dive, and there was a choice he was going to make if we all had in excess of that dive. We had to have 140 at the first turn and over 100 when we got back to the hold. He never checked our gauges. I swam up towards the end of the dive to our diver that was carrying a pony and let him know that I was uncomfortable with the amount of air I've got, and just be aware of that. So we stuck together. So that's task loading, low air, not sticking to the plan. And then when we left the wreck, I understood the plan was we swim out of the hole where they cut for salvage. And we go up to the top of the boat because we've been, this is our second dive, we've been very deep. And I thought we were going to swim back to the deco. The guy swam out and he went down. He went down back under the bow of the boat. Now, so we're exiting at, I think, 20, let's call it 23 meters. And then he takes the crew back down to 34 meters. And this is the end of our 7th deep dive. Because I was low in air, I had to make a choice at that point. What do? They all went down. I decided I'm going to sit above because of the clarity of the water. I thought I'm just going to sit on top of the bow and I could watch them go under me and I could see the rope in front of me and I know where the bottle is. So I sat up there and made my way up towards the, watching them. I saw them make the turn. When I was confident they were on their way up, I went ahead making my way back because I wanted to get to my deco stop earlier rather than later. Most of you know I've got a bung foot. Look, anyone with a dodgy hip or a dodgy knee, you know the hassle of doing a shore return when there's rocks underneath breaking waves. I don't know what's going to happen when my foot goes sideways on a rock that I can't see. So that was one more of those stress factors for me, getting out of the water when the waves are breaking and I can't see where I'm going to fall on next. And I fell a lot. So some of the dives I swam out, like I swam till I was in half a metre of water before I'd stand up just to avoid tripping over rocks. So once again, looking at Swiss cheese, task loading. It's also hard work. And talking to John Lippman about the break time, the 1 hour, he said you should be resting, not doing any physical exercise during that time. And I thought to myself, well, I was doing physical exercise getting out of the water.
Yeah.
If you're doing a boat entry, boat exit, you're in, you're out, you're sitting, you're talking. Anyway, so just lining up all these Swiss cheese things.
You didn't mention the hot fills.
Yeah, and hot fills, yes. And that last fill, yeah, I think we entered the water. Hey?
It's about 210, 220.
Yeah, so the tanks were arriving hot around 210 to 220 bar. So by the time you got to what I would call the start of the dive, which is above that staging tank, you're lucky to have 95 bar. Sorry, 195 bar. Yeah. So this is that first graph once again. So using the rule of thirds, that 1/3 tank mark. So that's where my tank was after we exited the salvage hole of the ship. And so you can see there, I'm rough, I'm like 48 bar, something like that. Like my alarm on my computer's already told me, hey, you're under 50 bar. And this is the point where I'm watching the other divers go down to 34 meters. So this is me sitting here making a decision because that I know exactly where in the dive, and that's my decision point there. I'm exactly 1/3 of my tank, and I know that period of time there is me sitting on the deck watching them. So it was only for about a minute, and I could see they're all down. They're not going anywhere else. They're heading towards me. Right, I'm making a beeline up the rope to my staging point. Now this beeline that I made. So I haven't loaded. There's one more slide I haven't loaded, but it gives off my computer. You can map your ascent rates, which is a very handy thing to look at. During this ascent here, there was one stage where I actually hit 16 meters per minute ascent. So that was this first bit here. So what we're talking about from around 20 meters to 15 meters. For a little bit, I swam too fast up the road. I was probably excited to be making my way back to my deco. And I ran that past John Lippman and he wasn't too concerned about that. He said, look, at the depth you're at, the degree of change, he said that's not really a big issue. But anyway, it's something else to point out, that all those Swiss cheese factors have lined up for me to now forget my 9 meters per minute rule and start swimming a little harder than I should have. So this is, I think, the last slide about some other Swiss cheese factors. So we went straight from a cold Melbourne winter to a humid climate in the tropics. At night, I had a couple of beers as we sat around having dinner. And then in the morning, I had a couple of coffees, both diuretics. So I'm in a tropical climate, having 2 sources of liquid that are not adding to my hydration. I didn't take a water bottle from home. and I forgot to go buy one down the street. So I take that. I should have gone with my own water, to be, be independent. The diving company didn't provide water. Well, they did on the first day, but generally they didn't provide water at the dive site. And there's not much choice. Like the dive site is remote. There's not like a shop out front you can go and go buy a bottle of water. But they provided coconuts. So we were smashing open coconuts on the concrete steps and drinking the water out of it, the coconut water. I reckon it's less than half a cup of water you get out of the coconut. It's not a real lot of hydration. So going back to John Littman and going back to the hospital and talking about all of this, John agrees that the hydration issue would have been a contributing factor. Definitely a big part of that Swiss cheese. The breaks between dives are definitely part of it. The number of deep dives back to back, the stress factors, the running low on air, the hot fuel tanks, all these things contribute to a diver that's not diving at their optimum capacity. So my one word summary of what caused my bends, when I'm talking to a non-diver, because they ask a lot of questions like, did you run out of air? Did you swim up too fast? Yada, yada, yada. I say I was dehydrated, because it's easier to explain that to a non-diver and the implications. But to this room and these people online, I want to make the main point is, remember that Swiss cheese model. There were so many things. None of the doctors, none of the King's Horsemen can tell me what actually caused me to get bent. I just know I got bent. And if you learned something from this, I hope you can take some stuff home.
Thanks for sharing. Very interesting.
So you didn't have any like pain in your shoulders or any of that classic?
No bends symptoms at all, just tinnitus in the middle of the night.
The ear, the balance.
Not even on the day of the dive. It was like 3 a.m. So like 18 hours after the dive, I got tinnitus.
Because we weren't even sure whether it was going to be a viral infection.
Sure.
Yeah, it was so.
Now, Andrew, would one of your recommendations be, if you are caught in this situation around the globe and you do have your DAN insurance, is you should also call the Alfred?
Number one, contact the Alfred. Even if you don't know if you're bent or not, even if it's just an inquiry, they are so helpful. The Alfred is so fantastic. And so their email is available online. So you email the chamber direct, and they don't muck around getting back to you. It must have been when they got to work that morning, they were straight on to me. And I had a Learjet that same day.
Well, that's I guess that's the reason for contacting them, is because they will speak on behalf of.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment? Because I think I had a bend once here, right, after doing a couple of dives with being Scully, not index. And
I was thinking a pattern.
yeah. Ian's the common denominator. But yeah, one thing I found is that I wasn't sure whether I had something by about 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, I think it was. No, Saturday night. I was thinking, yeah, look, it probably does. It was just a niggle in the shoulder, so the absolute classic, hey, just got something wrong here. And I rang the Alfred, they put me through to hyperbaric, and it rang out. And I just thought, stuff it, I'll just go to bed, take a Nurofen, and ring them in the morning. But overnight, it just throbbed all night. What I do know is if I'd actually run back and said I didn't get through, they would have made sure that I got through the next time, because there is a hyperbaric person there. But if they're not near the phone, when they transfer you from the general switchboard, it'll ring out. And that's what happened to me. So I ended up going back in the next morning and said, look, I'm not sure. I did these 2 deep dives and I'm not sure. And they just said, just how long are you going to take to get here? And just get your ass here right now. And the service was unbelievable. This was during COVID. I walked up to emergency on Sunday morning and went to the window, because they told me that's where you go to register during the week. Went to emergency, told them my name, started to say, you know, I'm here, and a guy who was standing 2 meters away turned around and said, "That's David Geeky, book him in, he's going up to the chamber right now." And like, they were waiting in the emergency reception area. I did the deep, in the side chamber, they've got the big area, then a small chamber. I did the thing in the small chamber with a tall deep, and the nurse had to sit there for 6 hours with me. And my symptoms didn't disappear. Sometimes I think they do. As soon as you go straight down, everything fixes. I didn't have that. But that night, the symptom just went. I rang them up. They said, "That's great, but you've got to come back tomorrow anyway, because we won't do a second treatment, and just go to general admission because it's Monday morning." When I turned up to check in to go through the COVID check-in and started to give my name, there was another guy standing there and just once again called out, "That's David, he's coming up to the chamber with me right now." They were waiting for me at the reception area, and I ended up going in that little cylinder the second time. But their service was unbelievable, and their argument was, it's not a matter of if, it's just when you're going to end up there if you regularly dive and do push the limits a bit. You can obey all the rules and do all the deco, but something will just happen, and on that day you bend. And they just say it's not a matter of if, it's just when. Because I've been to the tours that they used to put on, and that was the one thing that I got out of that. Besides seeing it all and being interested, they kept saying it's not if, it's when. So if you have any doubt, just come in because we can fix it.
What depth you diving to, Doug?
That day, well, it's just 33 or 36 or something with them doing the Coolidge, I think. It was 2 dives to 36 metres. And
What sort of gap between? What sort of gap between?
Probably an hour and a half.
When I was at Winnicott Island recently, one of the girls I was diving with, she got skin bends, which I'd never heard of. I got it on Google and showed me, you know, she had all these spots on the body. So she went over to Monada and spent 2 long sessions over a couple of days in their chamber. And that's something I've never heard of until I looked it up.
Can I just talk to a couple of questions online? Peter Beaumont made a point about the dive company there. They only have 11 litre alloy tanks and pony bottles of BYO. Now, I think that's something that our travel company should tell us if we're going to a resort, and you just assume that you turn up with your basic kit. And yeah, but anyway, I ran that past Mark Ryan, because I've been discussing this with him as well, and he said, he never trusts the local guides to have everything available. So when he takes his club away, they take the second set of regs and the harness for the pony, so the sling, so they can just get an extra tank locally. So that's more luggage to cart on board. But yeah, well, that's Mark's solution to that.
It's also pretty shocking that you provide water. Never been anywhere that didn't provide.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty rough. Yeah, no water in the tropics.
Did you give the name of the company, or is that staying silent?
I think it's the only one that's really close to the place.
Yeah, look, it's Pacific Dive.
Pacific Dive?
Yeah.
Isn't that sorry, them, and they seem to be pretty good. There was plenty pony bottles that,
Yep.
6 years ago or something, but.
I think the issue that they had is that they knew we were coming, obviously, and we knew that a few days after we arrived, there was a group of 16 Kiwis turning up. They'd already been busy before we arrived, and they kind of wanted to send a lot of their people away to get a few days off before the Kiwis smashed them with us. They'd having 20 people to deal with, and I think they were under-resourced in every aspect while we were there. We had 5 divers with a guide. There's got to be at least 3 meters space between, maybe even 4 when you've got that. That means the dive guide was 20 meters in front of me when I was at the end, which I usually was, because my wife likes going at the front, right? So I compensated and do it at the back. But I'm 20 meters behind a guy going down a 50-meter, deep channel in a ship. Like he had no idea where I was. Visibility was less than 10. They just didn't have enough resources, both guides, gear, to handle it. They were and the place was disgusting, quite honest. Like the toilet was, like My wife went there. I don't know how she didn't rip into it. Like it was filthy.
It was pretty, it was like a third world operation, wasn't it?
It was real third world. It shouldn't be like that.
Sounds like it's different people running it.
Yeah, I think it's had a strange.
Jack still owns it, but he's got a new manager because he has trouble, getting managers to run it. And this young guy, he was doing his best, but not a very knowledgeable best,
Not a diver.
Oh, a diver, but things that we practice as a club in our culture, like we're right on top of safety, but it just, some pretty obvious stuff just wasn't in the culture of that operation when we were there.
They're known as a technical diving place, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't understand.
And they did do a technical dive there, and they had a guy go down, Ian did a 65-meter dive with all the tech gear and everything. They had the capability. Their resources were just far beyond the stretch. And, it was disappointing because we should have been in two groups. There should have been, redundant there with both groups, all that kind of stuff. It wasn't well done.
So isn't that's one thing that we probably should as a club also have in our phones, use the phone number for the alpha.
Yeah, phone number and email address. That's something maybe as a club we should have on our website. It's behind
I
the.
think we do. I think we do have it on the
Well,
website.
anyway, Peter Beaumont says that pony bottles can be taken on aircraft in the main cargo. They need to have the valve removed and have the opening taped off, i.e. depressurized and no valve fitted. I was trying to get those comments. David says, very different experience in terms of approach between this trip and when we went there with DCI a couple of years ago. Makes one question the value of DAN insurance. Well, look, I have to say the DAN insurance is absolutely worth it because it's only like $160 a year. And I reckon they spent $250,000 on me. I don't know, it was $250,000, maybe 100,000. But a Learjet was scrambled with 4 professionals on board, and they were gone for a long time because they flew Brisbane, Vanuatu, Townsville, Brisbane.
Yeah, next to $160
And, I paid $160. Oh, plus the first flight, the low-level flight, there was another. That was another private local aircraft. And the chamber in Port Vila, and the private hospital in Port Vila, and the private hospital in Lando.
Well, one thing I learned in Vanuatu, if you're not going to that clinic, which is run by volunteers, it's bring your own blankets if you're staying overnight. It's really good, and probably a pillow as well. They did have one pillow in the hospital, and I managed to snag it when I stayed overnight with a oral infection, but no blankets. So a spare T-shirt, with the feet through the arms, was my blanket for the night.
Can someone remind me what PFO stands for?
Environmental, oval, which is their hole in their heart.
Right, yeah, that's right, yeah. So, Cara, the answer to your question, no, they didn't test me for a PFO at the time, but the cardiogram came back and said I've got an occluded left ventricle artery. So that put the cat amongst the pigeons.
Yeah.
And so the Alfred Hospital won't let me dive again until I get all that cleared. So now I've been seeing a heart doctor, getting all that clarified.
Yeah.
It's going to be.
Because I know that it comes up often with people who haven't dived repetitive dives overseas before, and then they come back and they're found to have a PFO.
Yeah, no, I don't have a PFO.
Yeah.
And I've got a healthy heart. It's just a bit clogged up.
Yeah, good to hear. Glad you're okay.
We're all going to have a problem.
That's a plumber's summary. Yeah, so I would endorse Dan, and I would absolutely endorse our Alfred Hospital. Is there any other questions online?
So you called the general number for Alfred, or was there a specific number?
I didn't phone because I had data only on my phone.
Oh, yeah.
So I emailed the chamber.
Yeah.
There's a chamber at Alfred, or was it?
Yeah.
No, it's GA hyperbaric at Alfred.
Okay. And they immediately came back to.
Yeah, well, that night the duty doctor set up the meeting the first thing the next morning when the surgeons arrived.
Yeah.
So next morning I was straight online with them. yeah, and it
Do
was.
we have that email on our emergency thing website? Did you say anything? Would be good to have. Well, I was thinking maybe have a sheet that you could take on your trip. So like first call Dan, second call Alfred, or write an email, third whatever. So you're in the best hands and you've done everything.
You know, we have the sheets in our folks as well where we go our safety drills.
Yeah.
We should have the phone number.
Yeah.
Of the Alfred on that. I suppose Dan is supposed to be our first port of call.
I thought they're external.
Or 000, yeah. But if you want advice, like, you know what I'm saying?
Oh,
If
yeah.
you want serious advice, and you've got a
Yeah,
bent diver, you want to talk to
I
the expert.
misunderstood. It sounded like Dan is only for the international.
Yeah, no, correct. Because when you come, it's for Australian citizens, when you come back into Australia,
Yeah.
you're covered by Medicare. Medicare deals with it.
Right.
So Dan's all about getting you home.
Right. So if we have a problem
or
on
to the
on the
nearest
local
depot.
dive, we need to call
000
000.
or Alfred, correct.
Exactly.
I sent you the numbers.
And you want, your private medical cover, I suppose, that will cover you off the ambulance, so you want to have an ambulance cover. So you've got to be flown from one place to the other.
That covers the Learjet.
Well, maybe it runs in Australia, but yeah, the ambulance cover covers the.
Well, if you don't have private hospital, medical, then you need to have at least ambulance.
Yeah, and you gotta check you got private, make sure that they are covering your ambulance, not expecting you to cover it and then claim back off them.
And don't assume that they do.
One other thing we learned about insurance, so Tanya got an travel insurance policy, and this time she didn't tick the diver option because I said to her, "Oh, don't worry about that. I've got Dan insurance, and we're going overseas. So why do we need to pay for it twice?" Then when all this happened, and we're stuck in Townsville, still got to get home and hire a car and pay for motels and things. We thought, well, that's gone to the shit house. But anyway, turns out it was covered. Because Tanya's trip was disturbed. She was traveling with someone that had to go home for a medical emergency. They don't ask what was the nature of the medical emergency. So our trip was cancelled for whatever reason. And at that point, they don't care. So Dan gets you to Australia and then your own insurance gets you back home.
On your own, that's
I don't know.
shit.
I don't know. I don't know if that's because Tanya did the insurance and the claim, or it would have worked for me on my own. I don't know.
If you can work that out and just send an email out. to
Yeah, no worries. Be in the next club up there.
They might take it off you though, that's another.
Thanks, Andrew. That's good.
Great presentation, thanks.
Thank you very much.